All right, looks like we're live. Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another Moonshire Monday. Hopefully we're not experiencing any problems with the audio or the mics, but we'll see. Thank you all so much for being here. Wolf, hi, welcome in. I'll give it a few more seconds for the stream to propagate and for everyone to kind of pile in a bit. I'm seeing a lot more people in chat. Allfather, hi, welcome in. Adele, hi, and some other folks from earlier in the chat. I'll go through that in just a moment. But today I have a few specific things that I'm going to be chatting about that are kind of interesting. Oh, wow, wouldn't you know it, the browser crashed again. Can you believe it? The browser crashed, so I have to go off of my stream's chat. Alex, Pinguis, Saba, Liam, Animatrix, Adele, thank you so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate all the support. Bahadir, Nick, and Sophie. Today, I'm trying to get my browser working again. Okay, it's a little bit better. Yeah, pretty much every single stream, the browser that shows I have my chat on the left and then the actual YouTube instance on the right. It's been really messed up. It's been freezing every single stream. I see Bellcat and Tiger Rover Games, Korok Frond. Happy Moonshire Monday. Happy Moonshire Monday to you as well. Thank you so much for being here. The one thing I'm going to be talking about today is, again, the browser crashed yet again. I don't know what to do about that problem. For anyone that streams on YouTube, I would love to hear how you're monitoring chat or having the stream open, because whenever I'm streaming, like, the browser window crashes every single time. It happens in Edge and it happens in Chrome. It happens in both of them. So I might have to try Firefox, I guess. How weird for a Google product to not work in Google Chrome, though. Question, would you be able to create multiplayer for this game? Yes, I am actually attempting to do that. So I have the initial steps set up where I can have 2 Steam friends who are both playing from the Steam client. They're able to see each other's like friends list in the game and then send each other an invite, and the invite like actually sends and you can connect the 2 clients together. So I have the networking side pretty much figured out and like how the relay happens. Steam offers all these really cool networking servers to help things out along and make it really easy to set up and stuff. So I've been trying that out, but there's still a lot of work to go to make sure it actually is functional, because even though I can connect 2 clients over a network, it's still a lot of work to like make the game work, because even when the clients are connected, I now need to program the game to like account for that, to show specific things, like the other player that you're playing with. Allfather, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the donation. Boom, it's Monday. Mick Monday, McMoonshire Monday. Yes, it is indeed. Sorry, the chat's a little bit small for me because I have to read on my backup chat. But thank you so much for the donation. That's incredible. Such an amazing start to the stream. Thank you. Would I make a class on the multiplayer later when I master it? Yeah, I'd love to. And that's the thing, is that I typically only really make courses or tutorials on things that I really, really understand. Otherwise, it just doesn't feel quite right. It feels a little bit phoned in. Brainiac Gamer, hi from Indonesia. Hi, welcome. Maybe Microsoft can fix my browser. Well, I wish. The browser I'm currently using is Edge, and it crashes. But you know, on an earlier stream, I tried Chrome, and it crashed as well. So there's just some fundamental problem with YouTube and their streaming. We are kind of pioneers here on this channel, right? Because YouTube streaming isn't really established or very big. The first issue is using Edge. No, yeah, I know. I get flamed for that all the time. But the thing is, they're both built off of the same engine, and when the crash happens on both Edge and Chrome, I mean the argument doesn't really work anymore. But yeah, if there was a browser that just worked, I would love that. Maybe Firefox, but that'd be very ironic if Firefox worked, but then the Chromium browsers didn't. Another thing I think I would pay for is 2D pixel art course. I mean, the thing is, pixel art is not really something that you can just learn from a course, is the problem. I didn't really learn pixel art from a course. I just learned pixel art from experimenting and trying out a bunch of stuff. Let me see, what are some examples we could look at? maybe like this one. I guess this is not the best example, but actually, I have a better example. I have an example that shows like my actual progress with creating the main player character. So if I go over to player, let's see, where was it? My point about pixel art is that even if I made a course that explained like my thought process or how I did things, it really wouldn't do you too much good. The only way to get good is to do it all the time, and then, you know, it gets better. I'm struggling a little bit. I can't find I had a really good document that showed like my actual iterative process of getting to this point, because I really do like how this player character looks, and I like that it has like every piece split up into different parts. That's really, really cool. But at the same time, even if I talked about like my outline choices or how I shade things, or like planning out a light source, like how the light's coming from this direction downward, there's little tricks you can do to make the pixel art better. But in the end, knowing those tricks is only like 5% of the battle, maybe. The real trick is you have to be experienced, and you have to have been doing it a lot, because it took a long time for me to reach this sort of design with this character. By the way, this is the character with his arm up, like he's holding something. There's two different versions, one where his arm is not holding, and then one where it is holding. Kyle Hydrate, thank you for the reminder. I really do need that. Is there a standard for encrypting / protecting your game files on export? That's an awesome question, and I want to talk about that. I want to pull up the Love2D game distribution page. So this is just an example. This is probably going to be something very similar for what the heck? Sorry, the site's taking a long time to load. But this process is going to be somewhat similar for other engines and stuff, where the question is, how do you export a game and then protect your files from just like being like just zipped out or exported, and then people can read your code or steal your code. And the truth is, there's only so much you can do. You can take steps to encrypt it to make it harder, but every game, like even AAA big name games, are going to get hacked, or going to get cracked, and people are going to be able to decrypt it. So there are steps you can take, and this document here talks about that process a bit for my game engine, or the one I use, Love2D. And specifically, there's a part down at the bottom. Where was it? It's been a while since I looked at this page. Or actually, you know, it wasn't this specific page. It was a different one. It was like Love2D game obfuscation or something. There's a specific article. Source obfuscation, maybe. I think it's this one. Yeah, here it is. So source obfuscation. This is a general term that probably applies to every, you know, game engine out there, where your source is the source code, and obfuscation just means you're making it harder to directly view. You don't want people to be able to just like open up your game and see the source code right there, because that's kind of weird and not super secure. You also don't want it to be super easy, where people can just like unzip your game and there it is, all the source code. That's not really super great. So source obfuscation is a process that this article talks about, where you can make it a little bit more difficult, or a little bit there's more of a process involved to you know, keeping it encrypted, so to speak. So in this case, it's talking about how you use the Luajit to build Love on its own with your source code encoded into it. But like this article discusses, while these tools may obfuscate the code, a veteran programmer will be able to reverse engineer the code similar to those mentioned earlier. If you really want it to be truly unhackable, there's not really a reliable way to do that. As far as I know, like all the games do eventually get hacked out at some point. I saw Games from Scratch decrypt the most famous. Oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably not very difficult. Also, it's a solo dev game. Yeah, in general. How to get sued for copyright. I mean, yeah, you don't really want to steal people's code for lots of reasons. One, it's not cool. It's just morally and ethically, it's a bad thing to do. Stealing people's stuff in general is not good. So don't steal people's code. Don't steal people's art. That's bad. But people are going to do that anyway, and you can take steps to make it harder for them to do that. And honestly, that's going to stop a lot of people. If you make it like actually challenging, then if it's a world of difference if it's an easy process compared to if it's a hard process. Yay, Moonshire Monday. Yeah, welcome in, Elijah. If you encrypt it, does that prevent modding? No, it doesn't. So that's a good question though, because what encrypting would do, and I'll just go ahead and show what I mean by this, and I'm gonna do it carefully because I don't want to show anything too concerning. Like, I don't think that there's anything. I don't really think that there's anything possible I could show that's concerning. But let's say that you downloaded my game. I wish Windows could make this bigger. I really hate how small everything is. But if you downloaded my game on Steam, it would look something similar to this. It would have a whole bunch of files, right? But when you run the game through Steam, all it's doing is it's running this moonshire.exe file. And actually it wouldn't have this here, and it wouldn't have this here. It would just have moonshire.exe, and then you run the game by double clicking this, and then it's gonna launch the game like normal. Okay? But the problem is, ideally you wouldn't want people to view the source code for the game. Like, you don't want people to do that. But right now, the way my game is set up is it's very easy. I think all you have to do is open it in like 7-zip or something like that. Or actually, I think that you can just convert this to a zip file and then unzip it. I think that you say .zip, and then you extract all. Let me see if this works. Never mind, that did not work. I think you do have to actually use 7-zip. Do I have that installed right now? Or WinRAR? I don't think that's what I can use though. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can do this right now. I think that I actually need to have 7-zip installed. If anyone knows, as a cybersecurity expert, I think you should run your logic on a server instead. Yeah. So in general, that's totally true. If, let's say that I was creating a game where there was like a leaderboard, or it was competitive or online, or I needed to make sure people didn't cheat, you are 100% right. I would need people to get the payload, get the important like details of the game from a server that I owned, because then that would be like the single point of truth. There's only one game, one version of the game that people are able to actually run and interact with the gameplay. Because right now, what you could do is you could take this moonshire.exe, extract out the code, rebuild it with new code, and then suddenly you're playing like a custom build of Moonshire that I didn't authorize. And now, like, let's say that the game was an online game, or I had a leaderboard. There was a speedrunning leaderboard for Moonshire. But if people are able to build their own builds of Moonshire and then submit their times to the leaderboard, what's stopping them from changing like their movement speed to be super crazy fast, and then now their speed time is completely invalid? It would break the whole thing. But even that has workarounds. People will find ways to just like alter the game while it's in memory, or like interrupt the payload as it's being fetched from the server. Like, people do some really, really wild stuff just to cheat. So there's only so much you can do. I think you need to use something like Resource Hacker. You might. I could do that, but I've never done that on stream. So I'd rather do that on my own first before doing it like raw on stream without having tested it first. Peach Dev, hi, welcome in. I think renaming it to zip does work. I think it should, but like I think you have to have the right tools. I think that if I had seven zip installed, which I think I actually do. I don't. I must have uninstalled it, so never mind. I did change hard drives recently, so maybe I must have installed it during that. What is an instrument you would recommend to be used in video games? In-game soundtrack. I use just synths. The weird thing about instruments and music production now is that synths, like synthesizers, or just like synthesized sounds, or things that like a keyboard can produce, it sounds so real. It sounds so real that it's almost indistinguishable, and sometimes it sounds cooler or better. So I would say that if you're interested in producing game music, I would get good at working with synthesizers, because some of them like have presets that sound already amazing, that you could whip up some cool sound effects or some cool sounds or some cool music or whatever it is that you need for your game, without needing to like bust out the didgeridoo in real life and trying to get the volumes quite right. I think that would be a really challenging process. Why do I not have 7-zip installed? Because I don't really need it. There's not really a need for me to use it. I was at a family event yesterday. Yeah, I went and visited my family. But yeah, it was a good day. I was out in the sun. It was cool. Have I ever checked out Picotron? I'm not familiar with that. Oh, by the way, I need to close this. Oh, I need to make this smaller because my my good YouTube chat was covered up. But again, hopefully the browser doesn't crash. Do I recommend taking sounds from stocks? Yeah, in general, I do. So in Moonshire, if you hear any sound, the sounds came from a few different sources. Some of them came from FamiTracker, which is, you know, if you strip back all the definitions, FamiTracker is just a synth. FamiTracker is the sound chip emulator that the NES uses. So like all the music that the original Nintendo was able to produce. FamiTracker, I think I showed it on stream before. FamiTracker. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, this program is able to like play synthesized sounds, specifically how an NES would produce the sounds, and some of the sound effects in Moonshire are built from this. So the sounds, especially the sounds from like when you hit a tree, or the footstep sounds, I think came from that. Like the impact sounds, a lot of that came from FamiTracker sort of synth stuff. Do I live in the US? Yeah, I do. How do I animate pixel art with rotation? That's interesting. So, like in my game, there are sprites that rotate. Let's see. Let's try and find a sprite that rotates somewhere. How like all the blades of grass? So on the ground around the player's feet, like all the blades of grass are swaying in the wind. And the way that's accomplished is just by setting the anchor point of the sprite at its base around the bottom, and then rotating it back and forth with a tween, with some kind of like easing effect. And that's how it's able to like get that effect. And the answer is programmatically. So this isn't a sprite sheet. It literally is just code telling it, okay, every second I'm gonna rotate a little bit more, and every second I'm gonna rotate a little bit less. And it does that just back and forth. That's how everything gets rotated and animated that way. And I used Audacity to edit sounds. Yeah, I still use Audacity. I learned from my past mistakes, though, and I'm not going to open up Audacity on stream, like, out of nowhere. I'm going to need to prepare for that first. Because I think the last time I opened up Audacity, it kind of, like, interfered with my OBS connection. Do I plan on offering courses? I'd like to make games like this one day. Yeah, so I actually have one on Udemy, so on Udemy you can check out all my stuff. Do I find a resolution you work with pixel art? or do I make the art around the resolution? So that's a hard question to answer, and really, it's more that I started with like the characters, and I started with the resolution of what I wanted my main characters to be sized at. Maybe I kind of also started with the tile sets, because the environments are all at 16 by 16 pixels, and 16 by 16 tiles is a very common pixel size ratio for tiles and stuff. So since that was the case, I'm like, okay, that seems like a pretty good starting point, and that's kind of where I started things and built things out from. But really, the main challenge with that is deciding what size are my characters going to be, and what size is the background or the ground, the environments. All of that needs to mesh. So if you have one of them at a starting point, everything needs to match that starting point. So you could start with the environments. You could start by finding a tile set that matches the vibe that you're going for, and then build characters around that. Or vice versa. You could start with your characters and then find some tile sets or build some tile sets that kind of just work well with that, you know, in general. For a competitive action game, do you think run faster using Love2D and scripting all of the aspects using Unity? Are you talking about like game performance or development performance? Because in terms of making games and fleshing things out, something like Unity or Godot is probably able to produce games and get things out the door faster. But for me, I really do like understanding every line of code and writing everything myself. So the process is more enjoyable and honestly kind of more reliable, I'd say, using something like Love2D, just because I have full control over all that stuff. How many visual layers am I working with? Quite a few. So like even the player character himself is made up of multiple layers. I was showing this just a second ago, where like the player has his head, his eyes, and the body, and the arm, and the belly, and the feet. So there's already a bunch of layers involved just with the player itself. Then there's all of the layers involved with the environments. There's a lot more involved there too. So on like here's a sample environment. You could consider actually all of these this list up here. I'm sorry it's really small. I can't make it any bigger, but each of these is a different layer, and they correspond to a different like sort of thing. So the props, these are things like the barrels and boxes that you can break. The plants, so that's like the grass particles and the flowers and the trees. There's water, so if I go down here, all of the water is in its own layer. There's things like this blockade, that's a field. Miscellaneous, there's a whole bunch of miscellaneous things. I don't think in this particular thing there are, because the bramble is a plant. But things like the treasure chests are considered miscellaneous. Walls. So all of these like walls around this is its own layer too. These are objects. All these are objects layers. Then I have the actual tile layers. Like here's when I can actually hide stuff. Like this is the base layer, and then the terrain layer. And then the deep layer is what the water is. So I can hide the deep layer like that. There's elevation. Elevation right there. There's things like details. So if you look really closely, you'll see all those things changing. There's a lot of different layers that goes into producing just one single map. And that's why I always say that level design is just like one of the most time-consuming processes in this whole thing. Because you have to create all of these layers and you have to organize them. Each one is on top of the other. That's why they're so important. It's very important that like these blades of grass, or like this crack here, this crack has to be over top of the terrain layer. So where is it? Details is over top of terrain, which is over top of simple, which is like the green back or base. There are so many different layers that go into this. It's a lot. I've pivoted to procedurally generated maps because of this, stuck on auto tiling. I mean, that's really, really cool. I worked with procedural generation a bit for this game as well, too. But I ended up finding out that I just prefer manually designed, handcrafted levels. I get a lot of value out of that. If someone wants to start in 2D game dev today, what should they learn first? First, just dive right in. The first thing you should learn is just make a simple game. Again, everyone get ready to take a shot because I'm going to talk about Pong. Make Pong. Pong is like the easiest game you can make, and even that is hard to make. It is very hard to make Pong. So that's my advice. If you want to get started with 2D development, find any game engine, any game framework that looks interesting. It could be Unity or Godot or GameMaker or Love2D, any of them. Download it. It's all free. All of those are free. Just download it, try it out, and try to make Pong. Just try to make a paddle that goes back and forth across the screen, and that's it. That's what you should do first. And if you don't know how to code, then you'll learn just enough coding to make the paddle move left and right. That's all you need to do. Now it's a proper Childcade live stream. Exactly. Yep, my quota has been fulfilled. What do I think about Pac-Man as a good 2D? Yeah, I'd say so. I think that Pac-Man is a little bit more complex, though, right? Because you have a character that can move in multiple directions, and then you have like an AI component with the ghosts themselves moving around the maze. Unless you just wanted to have it be like a maze exploration thing, that would be fine too. It could be like a Pac-Man time trial thing. I think Pac-Man's a really good one. In fact, like back in the day, GameMaker would include a Pac-Man clone as part of like the GameMaker 8 distribution, I think. Use tutorials if you have to at first, and then try to do it yourself. Yeah, I'd say so. That's a good point. Is that tutorials like the one on my channel, or the ones on my channel, are good for getting yourself accustomed to it. It helps you get familiar with the fundamentals. But the only way to get good at development, to get familiar with programming and making games, is to make games. You have to make games, and if the game is really complicated, like making a Zelda clone as your first game, it's going to be way too overwhelming and complicated that it's just not going to work out. I made Flappy Bird as my first game. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a really good one. But even that, I'd say, is more complicated because Flappy Bird has gravity. You have gravity calculations for the bird, and you have to procedurally move and create instances of the pipes. So it's still, I'd still say Flappy Bird is a more complicated example than Pong. And if you think Pong is too easy, then I challenge you to go make it, and make it in an hour. If you think you can make Pong in an hour, go do it. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll learn something and it'll be good for you. Is Godot good for 2.5D games? I would say so. I don't know that for sure, obviously. I think Octopath was Octopath made with... I'm sorry, I don't actually know. I was going to say Unreal just because of the graphics, but I don't actually know for sure what it was made with. But since Godot can do 3D and it can do 2D, I would have to imagine it could do that. Really, I would say any 3D engine is capable of doing 2.5D. Yeah, it's Unreal. Thank you for checking. Yeah, I was going to say, I vaguely remember it being made with Unreal Engine, but I didn't want to just like say that without knowing it for sure. But yeah, like when you look at the graphics of here, I'll go ahead and pull it up, of Octopath Traveler. I'll pull up Octopath 2. I really, really, really love the art style of this game. It's like one of the nicest. Come on. I wish it was easier to browse images. I really, really love how this game looks. And this is a mid-battle fight, but what I love about it is just... look, it has depth of field. The stuff in the background is like blurry, and it gets less blurry as it gets more in the foreground. Like this like bush and these enemies are very clear compared to the stuff in the background. That is so clever. And just like the way the lighting looks reminds me of Unreal. I think that's kind of why I always internalize that. I made Pong, but took things a step further by adding new mechanics to it. That's an awesome idea. That's a really, really awesome idea because there's so much you could do with Pong. You could add AI for the opponent. You could add multiplayer. You could make the ball increase in speed as the game goes along. You could add like a scoring system. You could add a main menu. You could add like full movement where you could go up and down in addition to left and right. You could add so many. You could add like obstacles or upgrades or fun, crazy stuff. There's so much stuff you could do. I think it's an awesome idea of just expanding on simple ideas. You learn about collisions, exactly. Collisions are hard. How do you here, I'll ask everyone out there. How do you calculate if a square calculates with a rectangle? How do you do that? It's math. You have to figure out what the math is, and overcoming that math challenge will teach you some math. And that's why, like, when you're in school, doing math homework helps you learn math because it's a challenge. You're challenging yourself to do these problems, and it helps you internalize the process and, like, really get it. I mostly use AABB collision method. Yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense. I imagine that there's so many different ways of handling that. And also, I would urge people to that it's okay to go with simple options. It's okay to find like collision types that like aren't super precise. For example, my game is a very clear example of that. The collisions in my game are not pixel perfect. I'll go ahead and show this if I go and show collisions. Look, this is what the collider for the player looks like, and these dummies too. They're octagons. They are not, or yeah, they're octagons. So they are not perfectly aligned to the pixel shape of the player. And you might say, like, that's dumb. Why wouldn't you just make it pixel perfect? Well, one, doing that is very complex. Look, this guy is like way off, but does it matter? The truth is, it doesn't matter. As long as it feels right, as long as it feels good, that's all that matters. Is look up the hitboxes for like a fighting game. I'm gonna look up the hitboxes for Smash Bros. Melee. Smash Bros. Melee funny hitboxes. I bet there are some crazy weird ones. This is a weird example, but this is an example of Charizard blowing his fire, and it's just like a giant red hitbox. It's way, way bigger. Here, that's not the best example. Let's specifically look up something like, I don't know, puff hitboxes. Oh yeah, this is the classic one. The puff back air, like Wolf was saying, is that when Jigglypuff uses the back air, it's like this huge red extended invisible hitbox. By the way, it doesn't look like this in game. It's just her foot. But when Jigglypuff's foot extends out, it like has this way extra space, and the whole point of that is just like extra balancing for the game. It's just, they're finding the fun rather than the realism. Sure, they could make this hitbox exactly match the foot shape of Jigglypuff, but is that more fun to do it that way, or is it more fun to have this giant hitbox that makes Puff have like this, like Wolf says, an invisible sword thrust? Have you heard of just shapes and beats? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind, is that your hitboxes don't need to be super precise. Some engines offer really precise hitboxes. Like when I used GameMaker, I remember all of my hitboxes in the games I would make were very precise and pixel perfect, because that's just how GameMaker worked. Everything was super precise in that. But it's a performance increase when you do that. If you did everything pixel perfect, that's more calculation involved, because calculating an octagon's collision is a lot less complicated than calculating a very intricate polygon's collision. Like, how do you know if a polygon with 17 vertices collides with a polygon with 29 vertices? It's really complicated. And that's why you use simple shapes like this, simple like ovals and ellipses, because you can just overlay them and it feels good and easy. It's simple. The simplicity really works well for game development. The hitboxes in Mario 1, they're insanely simple. I remember when I was watching you do some runs and how close you were getting to the piranha plants, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Because visually, I'll go ahead and look that one up too. Mario 1 piranha plant hitbox. Because it's just very, very strange to me how close you can get to it. Is this really what it looks like, Wolf? Like, can you confirm it? Is it like this close to its body? Because if it is, that's really strange, isn't it? I would have expected that Mario touching like the teeth or any part of this upper part of the plant would result in a death, but it is like that's what's weird. And the first time I ever noticed that was when I was watching Wolf run it. Thank you, Child K, for the tutorials. I am making my game with knowledge that you give. Thank you. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And Pac-Man the Ghost can be basically on top of you and you'll still be alive. I remember that. I totally remember that. How like it makes really tense moments. And you know why they do that? Imagine if one slight pixel overlap happened with the Pac-Man ghosts. It makes less like the moments don't get as tense because it feels really neat when the ghost is like really on top of you, or even in this example with the Goombas or the piranha plants, you get really tight close calls with Mario going over the piranha plants, and it feels good like when you're playing the game and you have those moments where it's like, oh, that was a close call, I can't believe I made that. That feels awesome compared to the opposite where it's like, oh, that was BS, I shouldn't have gotten hit by that. That sucks. Sonic 2 also has strange hitboxes. I really like strange hitboxes. Minecraft would be the only game with pixel perfect hitboxes. Does it actually though? I almost think it doesn't because it's just voxels and things are at an angle. I have to imagine that it does use straight line hitboxes for like when a sword in Minecraft interacts with something. I'm gonna look it up. I'll go ahead and look it up rather than just like talking out of my booty. Does Minecraft sword hitbox? I am very confident that it is not pixel perfect. I mean, I don't really know if that's to be trusted. I think it's gonna be hard for me to find a visualization of that. Items dropped, I'll have the same hitbox regardless of what dropped. That would make sense. Cause like someone posted this image. I'm skeptical. Just color me skeptical. I don't know if this is real. But if that is real, that would make sense. It's just the reason why I am inclined to believe this is real is because the amount of logic and code that goes into calculating these, like, look at these little grooves of the sword. What benefit does that give? Is that real? I don't know. I'm actually thinking this isn't real. But this at least demonstrates the point I'm trying to make, is that, like, let's say they wanted to make their Minecraft swords pixel perfect. They would have to calculate very fine details of this voxel box. Because also, look really closely at this image. There's pixels around the voxels. It's not like there's no such thing as pixel perfection. I guess there is. It's just like, does it improve the gameplay if you do that? And I just don't think the answer is yes. I think it's better to have a big hitbox like this because then when you slash your sword at something, even if it's slightly off, you'll still make that connection and it feels good. Sometimes it's just better to do that. Also, my browser crashed again. Can you imagine? Oh, out of memory. There's a memory leak. Error code out of memory. That's actually the first time I noticed that. So the YouTube streaming page, I think it has a memory leak. Is what I'm suspecting, just because it's hard for you to see, but it says error code out of memory. So that's cool. I'm gonna get rid of this image because I don't actually know if that's real. It's raycasted. There's no hitbox in Minecraft, and that makes sense too. That makes sense too. YouTube page has been buggy for me as well. That's a bummer. It's kind of accurate, but it's custom. The picture. That's what it says. In fact, like it says. Yeah. So like that's still a decent image to demonstrate the concept behind what I'm talking about. But then we can definitely compare like Minecraft Steve, Smash Ultimate hitboxes, because those are definitely not squares. This is actually kind of cool. Wow. Is that what, like, is he? That's actually not the best example. What? What's he doing in this? Yeah, I actually haven't played Steve in Ultimate. What move is this? Is this just the regular grab? Or is this him placing? So what's funny about this is, like, look at Minecraft Steve's hitboxes for Smash Ultimate. It's all circles and ovals. You think it's a pummel? Might be. That makes sense. It says, isn't that funny how big this hitbox is? And it's just like some big invisible smack. Because he's a square man. Oh, it's placing? See, like, that placing is what I thought too, but I don't know. It looks like a red hitbox, so a pummel makes sense as well. Is making a game without a game engine possible, and have I done it? I have not done that, no. It's certainly possible. People do that all the time. Look up Thin Matrix on YouTube. He makes his game without an engine. He does it all himself, and it's a very cool series. So this is why Steve is so powerful. I mean, yeah, maybe they could shrink this box a little bit. Circle hitboxes for a square character is funny. That's what I'm saying, is that, like, but when you're playing Smash Ultimate, you probably would not notice that these corner pieces of his head are not included in the hitbox, right? It's just that's the way the game works. But yeah, every single hitbox in the game is multiple circles put together. It's pretty funny. Yeah, I actually haven't seen very many Smash Ultimate visualizations. I'm more familiar with the Smash Melee visualizations, because I was really into Melee, like frame data and stuff, so I would look at these hitbox guides all the time. How do I use easing functions when you take them from the easing website? For me, I use a library. So specifically, in my code, I have this library that's compatible with Love2D called Flux. And man, this is old. This is from 2016. I would consider making my own, honestly, or a new one. But I still use it, and it still works great. I love Flux. So the point of Flux is that you can take those easing functions from easings.net. You can take these easing functions and apply them to the game engine. So in my game, look at the petals that are falling from the sky. These are, Jesus, laggy. But the petals that are falling from the sky follow easing types, because, like, you can see them sway and kind of, like, very, very softly move at a smooth rate. 2016 old. Well, for code it is. I think that when the code that is running in my game is from 2016, that is kind of strange. I bet there's some older stuff though. Winfield's not older than that. I don't think this is older. I don't think this is older. This might be. Yep. This one's from 2007. Wow. Wow. For Lua 5.1. Wow. Yeah, so this is used for serializing the data for saving. So I think this is really weird. So someone wrote this code in 2007, and it's being used in Moonshire today. That's really wild. Thank you, Julio Manuel Fernandez Diaz. Thank you so much for your code that you wrote so long ago. Code is older than you. Wow. There are people in the audience that are younger than this code. That is so wild. But but the thing is about code is that once you write a script and it works, you, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's totally true here. Maybe I could spend time making my own serialization code so I don't have to use this file. But also, like, this code works really well. What it does is it converts Lua tables into strings so that you can actually write the strings to a file, and then it does vice versa as well. So this is what I use to save data to my files, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty nice. You know, actually, I think I am going to have to switch away from this because I'm planning to switch from using Lua files for my save data to using JSON files. So right now, in the Love2D, or sorry, in the Moonshire demo, all of the code, all of the save data is saved as a Lua file on your computer. And I'm going to change it from being a Lua file to it being a JSON file. Because one, that's more standard, and two, it's more safe. Lua code is a scripting language, and you could script things. So if the save data is saved as a Lua file, that potentially opens it up to malicious actors, potentially. So I actually don't think this is going to be included in the final build of Moonshire because I'm going to switch to JSON, and I'll have to use a different serialization library for that. But that is kind of cool that this is so old. What game engine do I use? It's called Love2D. The old stuff has done the test of time rather than than that something coded yesterday. Well, that's the thing is that, yeah, I also probably found this code in 2018. Maybe 2017. I think I found this code in 2017. So it was already a decade old when I found it. And you're right, is that it stands a test of time. When things are that old and people are still using them after 10 years, why wouldn't it work another 10 years from then? That's a really good point. 2,500 resets, no shiny. Oh, I'm so sorry, Wolf. That shiny Dialga will come soon, I'm sure. Is Love2D something like SFML or SDL2 for C++? I don't really know exactly how to answer that, unfortunately. It's written in C++, the underlying engine is, if that helps answer your question. But all of the coding that you use to make your games is written in Lua. The engine itself is C++ based, though. Do you use Love2D? Yes, I use Love2D. What do I use then? Sorry, I'm misunderstanding. Same reason you don't use resources for save data in Godot. Oh, awesome. So you're referring to the probably the same Lua scripting JSON thing that I was talking about. Is that when it's JSON data, it literally is just strings. It's not. You can't really script stuff into JSON, except it's like a string, I guess. You know, maybe it is just theoretical, because I guess you could script a Lua string into a JSON object, and then when it's deserialized, it becomes a Lua object that can then be run. So, you know, maybe it still requires some precautions in order to be fully secure. But I think the standardization of it, and also the fact that it's not just a baseline Lua file sitting on your desktop, that's probably not a safe thing to be distributing or saving people. Is it possible to create a game for yourself and still enjoy it, or is that impossible due to developer blindness? A game for yourself and still enjoy it? I enjoy my game a lot. Like, the decisions I make for my game are not based off of, like, business choices or, like, really thoughtful planning. It's more that I go into it and build things, and what feels fun is the direction I take things. People talk about game design documents a lot, where they plan things out on paper and then develop it, but I don't work that way. I build and then feel things out. I don't really know with confidence what's going to work until I make it and play it. So the answer to my question is, I really do make games for myself. I make what feels fun to me, and I have confidence that if it feels fun to me, it will feel fun to other people too, because I'm so insanely picky. I am so picky, and I struggle with finding fun in games just naturally in general. So if I find my own game fun to play, that gives me a lot of hope that other people will find it fun too, because I'm so strict on my own standards for what's fun. Oops, I'm gonna get rid of these hitboxes. Is there built-in physics in Love 2D? Yes, there is. So in fact, all of the stuff that I was just showing is built-in physics. This is all it's based off of Box 2D, which is a standard physics library, and it's built into Love 2D. You can make physics objects in a physics world built in without any external libraries. For my game in Moonshire, I am using an extra library called Windfield, but I do not recommend getting involved with this right now. I think it is probably best to avoid it for now, just because Love 12 is going to be released soon, and Windfield will not be compatible with that. I think it probably is a little bit better for you at this moment in time to learn how the built-in physics engine in Love 2D works, and then I bet there are some other wrapper simple like libraries that can help with this later on. Your game is canvas in motion, full of creative fun, no need for a plan. In general, I agree with that, yeah. I think that having a small like guideline plan and also setting finishing like finish lines for yourself and timelines, that stuff's important too, because if you just allow yourself to work infinitely, then you will work forever infinitely. So it is good to set like goals and make sure that you reach a finishing point at some point. But I have been having so much fun with my own game, having it evolve over time and change as I figure out new directions I want to take things. So it's a balance. The guided, focused development process gets you to a finish line faster, but a free, open development structure will lead to some more creativity, and that's kind of the phase that I'm still kind of figuring out. The game mechanics I'm having in my game are still continuously changing. And before Moonshire goes 2.5D, I would actually love that. Maybe Moonshire 2. Maybe I can make a Moonshire 2.5, and then that will be like the sequel, and it'll be in 2.5D. It's like Lion King 1.5. Have I used Godot at all? I haven't personally used it. When I was working on finding the right engine for myself, I was like looking at all of them, and Godot wasn't really super out at the time. But I would really like to try out Godot. In fact, after I'm done with Love 2D, or if not, after I'm done with Moonshire, I want to try working on 3D games, and I think Godot is a really strong candidate for what I would try it out with. And now with 4D, interesting. Going Kingdom Hearts mode with the naming scheme, LOL. Oh, that would actually, yeah, Moonshire 2.5D Redux Final Mix. That would be the name of the sequel. I love Godot. I think that Godot seems like a really, really strong game engine that a lot of people are using. And Knuckles, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go ahead and save this great sword. Oh, you know, I didn't even get into the main talking point I wanted to show off. In the past week, the main thing that I was working... Well, okay, really, the past month, the main thing I've been working on has been web and online related things, just because I enjoy that stuff. So, over this past week, I acquired MOONSHIRE.com. So everyone... in your browser, go to moonshire.com. Isn't it amazing? You go to moonshire.com, and it's just going to redirect to the Steam page right now. But that's not the whole point. I got the domain name. That is the first step. And then now I'm working on a website specifically for moonshire.com. So I'm actually kind of happy with how things are going. I have moonshire.com, and that's available. And I have chalacate.com, so both of them are in use. Kind of wild it wasn't used. Yeah, about that. It was being used. I purchased it from the previous owner. So it was owned by someone, and I purchased it. Will we have a web build of Moonshire? I don't see that happening anytime soon, because I want to work on getting it out on Steam, get multiplayer, and possibly mobile, because people are asking for mobile a lot. Although if it was on web, that also equates to mobile, I guess. That's kind of the same thing. So we'll see. Was it expensive to buy the domain? I don't think that I'm prepared to talk about it right now. I need to make sure I know what I'm allowed to disclose and what I'm not. Coming 2024, well, that's a lie. Yeah, that moment in the trailer does not age well at all. Coming 2024. Yeah, that's so good. 350,000. No, not quite. No. But I am very happy to own the domain now. But now the next step is I'm working on a website, and I will go ahead and show that too. So this is the first draft of what I'm working on with MOONSHIRE.com. This is not live yet. This is just my local running website, but I think it's a decent start. It has the Steam link up at the top. It's gonna have the trailer right here in the top center. And me and one of my friends was doing a lot of research, trying to figure out what is standard. Did I animate the stars? Yeah, it's animated with CSS. Looks nice. Thank you. Appreciate all that. Me and my friend were doing a lot of research on these different like landing page for video games, and a lot of them follow a very similar trend where it's like the big logo up at the top, you have a few links right at the top too, and then after that is the trailer. So once I have the updated trailer available, it's going to go right here. And the other thing, and you know, I would actually love everyone here's opinion on this, is email newsletter. So if you browse all of these game sites for like Undertale or, you know, Hyper Light Drifter, or, you know, those are off the cuff examples. Those might not even exactly have newsletters, but if you browse different indie game sites, a lot of them have newsletters. A lot of these games do. And I have to ask, do you guys sign up for newsletters? Because if you do, I'm interested in hearing about that. The music sets the music. Yeah, it totally does. Please don't sell our data / email. Well, I would never do that. And that's the thing is, I personally don't sign up for email newsletters. I personally don't. But if it was for a game that I was really excited about, I would. In fact, I have signed up for an email newsletter. I signed up for the Mother 4 newsletter when that was a thing. It's now renamed to Oddity. I don't know if they're still developing that. But I did sign up for that, and I don't know if they ever sent out an email because the game never got released. You never check your email? Well, unfortunately, I think that being an adult does involve checking your email all the time. So I do check my email. It would be useful for business interests. That's the thing is, like, I think that a lot of these game sites have an email newsletter or an email list because it works. Like, they wouldn't have this on there if it didn't work or if people didn't sign up for it. So people must like it. Otherwise, they wouldn't actually be offered. So I'm trying to have an open mind about this because for a long time, I was always saying I'm never going to make an email newsletter. That's a waste of time. I don't use email newsletters, so certainly no one else does either. Hydrate, thank you. Appreciate that. But I shouldn't be so close-minded about that stuff. If it turns out that creating an email newsletter is good for the health of this game and development, then I probably should do it. If most games have an email list, I wouldn't send out anything. It would be like once every 3 months. Because again, I hate getting spammed with junk. Like, imagine signing up for an email newsletter and then they send you something like every week. That's way too much. It wouldn't be anywhere close to that every few months. This is fitting for a king. Thank you. Well, I hope that if you're talking about me, I appreciate that. I think Godot is easier since it does more for you straight out of the box. In general, yeah. A game engine like Godot or Unity is going to have a lot more, it's going to do a lot more for you. It pulls a lot more weight compared to a game framework. A game framework is intentionally lightweight where you have more control. And then Game Maker, is a step forward even more than that, where it's super approachable to make games with Game Maker. Same with like Scratch, because it's like drag and drop coding. It's very quick to get started with. I'd say that's a really good starting point for a lot of people. it's not too difficult or time consuming. Just go for it. Totally. Just because it's right for some people doesn't mean it's right for you. Yeah, that's the thing. When a lot of people ask about game engines and game frameworks and like what's best for me, what's best for this genre, here's the honest to God truth. They all work well for all genres. As long as you're the only divide is 2D versus 3D. Make sure you're using a 3D game engine if you want to make a 3D game, and make sure you're using a 2D game engine or one that supports 2D if you're making a 2D game. That's the only thing you need to make a consideration of. I personally do not recommend making a 3D game with Love 2D because it's a 2D game framework. It's not really designed for anything more than 2D. You can do it. It's perfectly possible. I just wouldn't recommend it. Now, that being said, as long as you have that situated, it does not matter at all which one you choose. Like, Godot can do 2D games or 3D games, so if you choose Godot, it will work for no matter what project you're working on. I promise you, there's no project too complicated that an indie developer is going to work on that Godot can't handle. And the same applies to Unity, the same applies to Unreal Engine, the same applies to Game Maker even, assuming you're making a 2D game. The same applies to Love 2D, assuming you're making a 2D game. The only difference is how you feel about working with that engine. If you don't like working with Unity, don't use Unity, even if everyone's telling you to. If you don't like using Godot, don't use Godot. I know Godot is very popular right now and everyone's talking about it, but if you don't like using it, you should not use it because it's going to be better for you to make a game using an engine that you actually like to use. It's very, very simple. And they all can make good games. Look up the list of games created with whatever engine you're interested in. If it's what's chat? I know chat's going crazy. Look up the games made with whatever engine you're looking at. Love 2D doesn't have too many, but Love 2D has Balatro, and Love 2D has hopefully Moonshire within the next however long it takes. So there's at least a couple examples, but Unity has endless examples, Godot has endless examples, Game Maker has endless examples. You can make whatever game you want in any of these engines. They all work fine. So just go ahead and try it out and try them all out. That's the other thing, they're all free. There's not really any decision-making process involved here. Just download it. If it looks cool, just download it and then try it. If it's fun, keep making games with it. Also, the other thing, I'm going off on a tangent. If you learn how to use one game engine, it will transfer to other game engines too. It's not a waste of time. If you learn how to code with Love 2D and then you switch over to Godot later on, it's not like you wasted every minute of your time with Love 2D because you learned a lot of experience with game development in general. You learned a lot of coding skills and like code organization skills and project management and asset management and all the other skills that goes into game creation. It is not just like the skills directly tied to the engine itself. That's only like that's a small portion. If you told me I am not allowed to use Love 2D ever again, I have to remake this game entirely using Godot or whatever else, I would say, okay, not that big of a deal, because I learned a ton from this process. This is my preferred engine. This is my preferred language. I'm going to continue finishing this game in Lua and Love 2D. But if this game suddenly switched over to being a mono game with C#, it wouldn't really change anything for me. I would have to spend like maybe a week or two learning some of the specific differences, learning some of the libraries that I need to pick up on, and learning some of the quirks that are different between the two. But besides that, it really wouldn't be that different of a process. I'm just coding still. It's a different language. Coding languages are not that different from each other. It's the same with like, it is the same with real world languages too. If I was so like I speak English, but let's say that I spent many years learning Spanish, which I did. I spent 4 years in high school learning Spanish, and it was really, really hard. And I wouldn't say I ever became fluent, but they say that learning a third language is easier than learning the second language, even if they're very different languages. So if I went on to learn French, for example, like if I paid Wolf for some one-on-one French coaching, I think that the process of learning French would go a lot more smoothly compared to when I was learning Spanish for the first time, because a lot of the translation tactics and language structure, like the rules that you learn, you wouldn't want to do that. I'll take your word for it. I think that there's a lot of carryover. And you know, people in chat are probably more knowledgeable about this than I do, because a lot of people live in multilingual countries, and I bet that you can speak on this better than I can. Is learning a third language easier than learning the second language? Wolf says yes. And the reason why I think that's true is just because you pick up on those skills and those tactics of learning. And it's the same with game development. You pick up on the skills and tactics of learning a language like Lua, and you'll pick up on the exact same quirks and challenges and these other languages, and you'll see the similarities. Like, have you ever looked up Spanish versus Italian? I hear that Spanish speakers can just talk to Italian speakers and they can kind of understand each other because the languages are very similar. Hopefully I'm not oversimplifying it. I just heard that that's kind of true. I'm sure that there's a lot more nuance to it than that. But at the same time, some languages are more similar to others. You compare this language, Lua, to Python, and you'll see more similarities of this compared to like C++ or like Fortran, something really crazy complex like that. I know German, English, and GD script. Yeah, nice GD script. That totally is just like all the rest. It's not that similar, but yes, they're from same roots, so a lot of words are similar, and the phrase structure is mostly the same. That makes sense. The only reason I thought that is from anecdotal. One of my teachers in high school was a Spanish speaker, and she went to Italy, and she said that she struggled, but she was able to communicate with people. So there must be enough of a similarity to where the overlap is meaningful. You can actually have a chat, or like in an emergency situation, you'd be able to figure things out. I don't think English has any language that's similar enough to that. What was there is an English, or there's a European, there's a European language that sounds similar to English, where it sounds like how English sounds to non-English speakers. I hope someone knows what I'm talking about. If you do, let me know. Read some Dutch. That sounds cool. I can order a full breakfast in any country just by making by just making a face. That's a pretty good one. There's a Jim Gaffigan good joke where he goes up to a drive-thru and he's like, "Man, it's so easy to order from a drive-thru menu. You just say 1, and then they give you your food." Or, "I'd like a number 4," and then they give you your food. And he's like, they should just simplify it to noises, where you pull up and you just go, "Ah," and then they give you your food. That kind of reminds me of what you're saying. So this website with the newsletter, let's circling back to that. I'm gonna give it a shot, and once this is live and people can sign up, I'd love your guys' support and seeing if this is even worth pursuing. And I would put some effort into it, making sure that if I'm sending out an email to people, it's gonna be worth your time to read. It'll probably include like all of the patch notes from the past few months and plans for the coming months and things like that. I'd want to make it worth your time if you're signing up for my thing. Why is there no bow in my game? That's a good question. I really should put the bow back. There was a bow in an earlier build, like back in the Legend of Lua days. But it has taken out just because mainly it didn't really fit into the design of... Like, the game really is balanced at this point around weapons that you pick up and drop. And a bow does fit into that. I should add a bow. But it would need to be some kind of, like, stunted, nerfed bow where it's not OP. Because if you can just, like, shoot enemies from really far away, that would probably become OP. In the same way that the boomerang is currently OP in the game. The boomerang is the best weapon, I think, in the game. Even though it has no armor values, the reason it's so good is just because you can stun lock enemies from a distance, and then even though it doesn't do too much damage, it's just the range on it is so good that it basically breaks the game. It's that good. And I worry that if I were to put the bow back in, it would be like the same sort of thing. Curious to see how easy it is to avoid the junk folder. I'm not quite sure. Does my code have to be object-oriented programming in Lua if I am making a game? I would say, but not exactly. And like Lua isn't an object-oriented programming language, but you can use object-oriented programming design when figuring things out. Allfather, thank you so much. Melee hits restore ammo. Melee hits restore ammo. Oh, that's a cool idea. Okay, so I see what you're saying is that you have a bow and you have ammo, and whenever you shoot, it consumes your ammo, but you can restore your ammo back to full, or by like bit by bit by using melee attacks. And something like that is kind of cool. I like that concept. I think something like Death's Door does something like that. I think that's how Death's Door works, because Death's Door, you play as the crow and you have a bow and a sword, and you have a limited number of shots with the bow. And I think it's the same thing that you kind of described, where if you hit an enemy, it restores that ammo. And a concept like that could work. The reason why I'm iffy about it is just because currently you can't really hold more than one weapon at a time. So if there was a bow, it would need to be like a special case that's with you while you're holding other weapons, which I could do. What I'm more thinking of is like a bow with infinite ammo, but it's just that you have to charge it up maybe. Like for example, actually this could be a way to nerf it. Is the boomerang right now is so good because you throw it immediately. But let's say the bow is like this, but it's slow. Like you have to charge up your shot for 1 second. And that's what balances things out. The prototype bow is completely OP. Oh man, I really miss the bow arrow sliding, whatever. You guys came up with a really funny name for it. I can't remember what it was. Death's Door was such a cool game. Yeah, I love the style of that game. I never actually finished it. Do you want to know a very minor complaint? Crabbing. It's really good. That's a really good name. A very minor, strange complaint about Death's Door is Death's Door, you start the game, and at some point early on, it says, "Oh, you have reached this point in the game, and now in this part of the game." Wait, how do they do it? Basically, it spoils itself. It tells you that you're gonna go to the mysterious woods. You're gonna go deep under the sea. You're gonna go high above the clouds. It tells you exactly what the dungeons are going to be, and I really wish that it didn't like spoil itself like that. Half movement speed when charging takes 1.5 seconds to charge. Yeah, something like that sounds awesome. Thank you again for the donation, Allfather. I think that something like that works really well into the design language of this game. And plus it's different. Like, all of the weapons attack instantly. So having a weapon that's entirely different that you have to actually charge up in order to attack with, a bow feels very intuitive for that too. Where you need to charge it up in order to shoot something. It's intuitive because it's the same with a bow in real life. You can't just like pick up a bow and insta-shoot it. I mean, maybe you can in like a really cool ninja RPG or something like that, but it makes more sense that you have to pull back the arrow and then let go. I think that would work a lot nicer. Getting into game development, quick question, do I enjoy math more or physics? Which one do I love working with when you're creating games? That's an awesome question, and the truth is math for sure. I don't actually work with physics very often because every game engine, every game framework is going to have a physics engine built in. Or there's like physics libraries. And what this means is that the physics calculations, like what you would learn about in a physics class, those calculations are not things that a game developer really has to worry about because the physics of the world is calculated by the game engine or the physics engine. Now, that being said, you can code your own physics engine. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But at the same time, you would be like reinventing the wheel if you applied your own physics calculations, your own logic to like getting this physics like setup completed. But like all of this stuff in my game where you have these hitboxes, this is using the built-in physics engine of Love 2D. I did not research any physics. I did not research any algorithms involved with making this stuff move around. All I am doing is the math of calculating how to move it rather than like calculating mass and velocity. You can set those properties, but in terms of like how the collisions are handled, like how I can move this sword around just by colliding with it, there's a lot of math that goes into doing this, as simple as it is. but 2 octagons, and like see how there's a bit of friction with the ground too. It slides to a stop. There's a lot that goes into that, and that's why I say reinventing the wheel is that this is all here already, and the challenging part then is applying your math knowledge to use this engine to create a convincing physics world. Because just because you have physics objects in a physics world with like gravity or friction or movement and mass and things like that, that's not convincing enough. You still have to apply it in a way that feels good. So both of those things are important, physics and math. But me personally, I don't really work with calculating physics. I use physics engines, and then I use my own math knowledge to apply that physics engine in a way that accomplishes kind of like what I'm going for. Hopefully that answers the question that you asked. Would you benefit from an entity component system? I would say no, mainly just because the custom-built system that I made for this game works on its own. Everything, it's kind of like an entity component system, where every object has its own state. Like this weapon here. This weapon on the ground has its own state. It's in the, it's in the like ground state. But then I can pick it up, and now suddenly the sword is in the held state. So like this is sort of like an entity component system, but it's my own sort of specific implementation of it. It's my own take on this process. So you can use an ECS, you can use entity component system library to get the functionality of your game all set up. But I personally don't find it necessary, just because I almost like custom coding that aspect of it. I like understanding the full state of everything, but that is what an ECS does. For an ECS, for anyone that doesn't know, entity component system is basically saying that while things are in different states, they behave different ways. And that's true. That's true in my game. While the player is in the normal state, he can move around, but while you're rolling around, while you're rolling, like I can't change directions. The animation is locked in. So the state between these two different states, the entity component system states, is different. It's just the way it's coded, you know, is debatable on if you would call it entity component system, because ECS typically implies like polymorphism with the function names, where you don't have to change the specific calls. It behaves in the same function calls, but the behavior is different based on what state it's in. I don't know. It's essentially the same thing as what I'm doing here, but you know, it might be more organized, or I might be using some sort of library, some ECS library. I personally haven't felt the need to do that. It's the same with like an engine, where I could use a game engine to do some of that heavy lifting for me, but I kind of like doing it myself. There's some things I like doing myself and some things I don't. And some people might feel the same about the physics engine as well. Some people might not like using Box 2D out of the box for their games. And it might feel better for them to make something from scratch using their own physics knowledge. What's been the hardest and most time-consuming logical system to build for my game so far? Oh, that's an awesome question. Most complex logical system. Let's browse, because I actually am not fully sure off the top of my head. I'm leaning towards the scaling. AI is up there. I'm leaning towards AI. I think that enemy AI is the most complex. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna change my answer and fully commit to enemy AI, because I coded it all myself, and all of these files, by the way, it's all of these files. All of these files is the enemy AI, and I'm not even done yet. I need to add some more. But this is definitely the most complex set of systems, because all these files are coordinating with each other in meaningful ways, and it's organized so I always know where to look for individual problems or individual like code updates that need to be made. If I know that the animation is buggy, I can just go straight over to mob anim, go into this file, and everything related to the animations is in here. And that gives me a lot of confidence. Whereas before, I still have my old enemy code. I have old enemies. So this is the enemy code that came before my current ones, And this is the same thing where, like, yeah, sure, enemy animum, but there's still a lot of mixed logic in here. Like cooldown, well, I guess that's necessary. Never mind. Do attack, do leap, do roar. I don't really like that that's logically coded into the anim file. Like, I really would have preferred this happened somewhere else instead of happening in the anim file. And that was kind of the mentality. It felt weird that there was non-animation logic happening in this anim file. So this new mob anim, I guess this still is doing the same thing, but it is using the like ECS states to decide, like, is it an attack hit or is it an attack finish? And same with move. There's a lot more that needs to go into this to flesh it out, and really, I wouldn't mind taking a step back and recoding it too. And quite a bit of viewers today. Awesome, I'm glad to hear that. It is always nice when a bunch of people join. I actually can't see how many people have joined because my browser has crashed. It's just not working, so no analytics for me today. How do you move an object diagonal? Yeah, so it's simpler than it sounds because, you know, the way that an object moves left and right is really simple. It's just, to move to the right, you increase its X value. So when I hold down the right arrow key, all that's doing is it's increasing the player's X position by a little bit every frame. When I hold down the left arrow key, it's decreasing the X position by a little bit every frame. And up and down, it's just doing the Y position. Decreasing the Y position, increasing the Y position. So moving diagonally literally just means I'm doing both of those at once. I am increasing X, and increasing Y will make me go down right. Decreasing Y, increasing X is upright. So it's just the combination of both axes at once is how you get that diagonal movement. In a 3D game, it would be the same thing, but with the like vertical axis, the Z axis, you know. All of those combined creates some complex movement. There are -7 people in chat. Well, that's unfortunate. Actually, no. If there's -7 people in chat, that means it wraps back around to the maximum number. So there's actually the maximum number of people in chat. Don't you normalize the vector with diagonal movement? Yes, I do. That's a really good point. So the way I specifically do it... Sorry, my throat's a little bit stuffy. The way I specifically do it... Let me see if I can pull it up. Player move. So, vectors. I use a vector for all of my movement. You can see here that it's getting the movement input. It's tracking, like let's say that you were using a joystick, because that's why it's formatted like this. If you were using a joystick to move, you could have very precise angles. So input X might be like 0.2 and input Y might be 0.9. And then that creates a unique angle that gets put into this vector, and then it gets normalized. So I'm using a vector library to get all of this inputted into one line, and then it gets stored into player.dir. And then since this vector, like, it's just a point, it's a 0 to 1 value, I can just apply this to the movement here, set velocity using vec_x and vec_y. And it does that using player.dir. I rate this chat 7.8 people out of 10. That's too much water. He can't read everything, my good sir. He tries, but yeah, I do my best. I'm sorry. I can't believe we're 2 billion. Man, I'm so excited. So exciting. There are there's a normalized amount of people in the chat. That's an interesting way to phrase it, but yes, I'm totally with you. That's a cool way to say it. Yeah, the long story short is to normalize a vector, you have to use math to just decrease the length of the side of a triangle. Let me pull up MS Paint and try to see if I can figure it out. Sorry for the blinding light. Let me turn it to a dark background. So if I had my vector like this, let me make this a little bit bigger. So this is going to be... These are my axes. Sorry, I lost track of something. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So if you had a vector that was going from here, and let's say you're going upright, so it would look like this. The problem is, if you're going straight to the right, the length of this point right here, the length of this line, is 1. So the length of this line here is 1. Meanwhile, the length of this line here is bigger than 1. It's like 1.4 something. Right? So we don't want this line to be 1.4. We want this line to be 1. So the way that you normalize the vector is, instead of the vector storing this point right here, the tip of the arrow, we're going to store this point right here. We're going to try and calculate where is this point, because this point here, this one is 1. Okay, the whole point of me doing this, by the way, is that when you draw a circle around this whole thing, this line here will match the length of this line. We want every direction to have the same length to it. We don't want this longer line to have 1.4 length. We want it to have a 1 length. So then the question is, how do you calculate how do you calculate the position, the point here, to get that length? And really, off the top of my head, I don't actually know. Actually, I do know. Let me think about it. Let me think it through. So if I'm trying to calculate, let me try a new color. I think I can figure this out. So if I'm trying to calculate this point right here, and I know that the length of this line right here is 1, and I know that the length of this line right here is 1, do I know this angle? If I know this angle, then you can calculate it using SOHCAHTOA. I think that you have to use SOHCAHTOA, and then you can calculate the XY using this inner angle. Because if you have, you would have this angle, because you can convert any vector to its appropriate angle. So you would calculate this inner angle, you would know that this hypotenuse is 1, and then you would be able to get this length to get the final point. So you'd be able to calculate it using trigonometry. But it's a lot easier to just use this normalized function, because it takes any vector and normalizes it right away. How was it for you to add weapon fusion system to your game? Was it difficult or surprisingly easy? Well, I don't have weapon fusion in my game, but I do have the multiple weapons, and it's just nice that you can change out which weapon you have equipped. That part was a little bit challenging, because like I was talking about before, every weapon has its own state, and literally the weapon just recalculates its position every frame. While it's in the carried state, it checks where is the player exactly this frame, and also, look, it like bounces with the player, with the player's animation. The player has like a bit of a bounce with his walk cycle, and the sword bounces with him. That all has to be very meticulously calculated. It's a lot of work. Opinions on Minecraft Dungeons. I have not played it myself, personally. I know, sorry, I saw your comment a little bit late. I just made Space Invaders, which I make next. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to make Space Invaders. Honestly, if you were able to make Space Invaders, you could take it a step further. We were talking about this earlier in the stream, where it's okay to add more features to it. So if you successfully made Space Invaders, try giving it a main menu. Try saving the high scores to a save file and then loading it the next time the game loads. Try adding multiple levels or multiple difficulties. Give it a boss. Give it multiple bosses. Add some power-ups, add some like weird obstacles, or some try some cool visuals. Maybe you could work on the art. Maybe you could practice your pixel art or your vector art or your 3D modeling. There's so much stuff you could do with a Space Invaders game. You could turn it into something totally different, and that's the exciting thing about game development. You know, this game that I'm working on right here, it started as a Zelda fan game. Like, if you go to my channel and go to some of the oldest videos, it was called Recreating Zelda. I was literally trying to make a Zelda fan game, and then eventually I realized, oh, I'm doing all of this custom cool stuff to it. I want to take it into its own direction and make my own thing. And that's how this game came to be. And I think that that's how a lot of games kind of can originate too, is you start with one thing and it evolves into its own thing over time. Jogurt Craft, you said that you got an error. If you can post what the error is, I can help out. Make the game into a website, or armor game is hard. Should I focus on another? I mean, what is your goal? It sounds like the game is already a little bit ambitious. So if this is your first game or you're still new to game development, take a step back, make it very easy. Make Pong, make Space Invaders, make it very easy until you feel comfortable. Making a game for the web is harder than making a game for desktop, and I would almost say it's harder than making a game for mobile too. So stick with desktop games for now. Get comfortable with making games, and then once you feel like you have some experience with it, taking a step into web development, into making a web game, perfectly fine. But it is hard. It is harder because you have to worry about the web page itself. You have to worry about hosting. You have to worry about connections to JavaScript, and you have to worry about external libraries. I'm using Love2D, and Love2D does not natively support HTML, so I have to use love.js in order to export the game to a web-compatible format. And there's a lot of intricacies and difficulties that goes with that because it's not fully up to date. It's not an official supported version. So I would say if you're still getting started, do not scope your game for a web game because that is much harder than a local game. Unless, okay, yeah, I'll take a step back. Unless you're using a game engine like Unity or Godot and it natively easily supports exporting to HTML. If it has an easy way of doing it, then that's fine. But if it was easy, then you probably wouldn't have been asking me that question. If it's hard, then I would say take a step back and make it a little bit easier for yourself. I always try to encourage people to kind of set their ambitions a little bit lower at the start of their journey, no matter what it is you're working on. If you were learning an instrument, I would say it's irresponsible to sit down with a Beethoven piece and start trying to work on that as your first piano piece. No, you're going to start with Mary Had a Little Lamb. You're going to start with some really easy piano tunes, start with some scales, and do some easy chords and work your way up there. And then you'll start challenging yourself with tough, really tough piano pieces that'll sound amazing. And that was the goal from the start, right? The goal was to play complex piano pieces, but you had to spend a year or longer doing these fundamentals and these boring things. It's not very fun, you know. It's the same with game development. You have to spend a long time working up the fundamentals. That's why I say start with Pong. Start with Mary Had a Little Lamb, please. Don't jump right into Beethoven. That's what a lot of people like to do. Like, a game like my game is so much more complex than what most people should be starting with, and web development is an extra factor that makes it more complex too. So I'd say all that combined is just a lot to consider. Opinions on Minecraft Dungeons. Someone already asked that. I have not played it, and I would probably not take inspiration from it. Although I do know, like, there's this guy on TikTok that posts all the time who worked on Minecraft Dungeons, and I think he's pretty cool. Did I learn pixel art for my games? Love my content? Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, I would say that I learned pixel art myself, but the way that I learned pixel art was not from like following guides or from practicing specifically. It was from making games with Game Maker or whatever else I was working on, and making my own sprites. So yeah, like I knew that I wanted to make games, and I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna make games, I need to make sprites. So I just started making sprites, and they were bad at first, by the way. I was like making sprites with MS Paint or with the built-in Game Maker sprite editor, and they were awful. They were very bad sprites, but they got better every year. Like every year my sprites looked a little bit better, and now I think my sprites look pretty good. But even still, I need help with some of the more complex sprites. Like Ellie and Tony helped me with this big complex gate, and I love it. It looks amazing. This is a little bit beyond the scope of something that I could pull off myself, but those two really did a good job with this. I don't want it to end this wonderful live stream. Oh, well, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you. Once I finish my game, do I plan on making tutorials for it and sharing how I built certain systems? Yeah, I definitely would. And really, I would like to do that even now, as development is in progress, I want to go back to making videos. It's just I need to find a format and find a production structure that works for me. Because, you know, the videos that are on my channel right now are very high effort and high time commitment. Very high time commitment. Just because they're all very scripted. I have a lot of custom like recordings for it, and there's a lot of editing that goes into it. Each one of those videos, it would take like a week of work to do, and that's just too much time for me to be taking a break from development to work on a video for a week straight. It's just too much. So I'm trying to think of a new format where I can leverage some of the clips from these streams and convert it into a full video. But I'll need to have more preparation and better recording set up too, because like I showed earlier, I have a bit of trouble when I'm recording audio via Audacity while I'm streaming. What am I working on today? Just chatting mainly today. I was showing off the new MOONSHIRE website that I'm working on. I was talking about, I was getting people's opinions on the newsletter, because I was saying earlier in stream how I'm not a fan of newsletters myself. I don't really sign up for these, but pretty much any game out there, any indie game or any product, they're going to have a newsletter, they're going to have some kind of email sign up. And I think I would be doing myself a disservice to not have one as well. So I'm curious if other people feel the same way, but certainly they must work, otherwise people wouldn't have them on their websites. But my goal would be to do it in the most non-intrusive, least annoying way. I really don't like bogging down people with emails. It would be like once every few months. I really don't want to bother people. That's an important thing for me. Just being active on social media is good enough. That's how I felt always too. Is that I've always felt like social media is the best way to reach people, but what I'm starting to realize is that everyone has their own like day-to-day, their own life and their own thing that they interact with. And a lot of people don't use social media at all, and I respect that, because social media it can be bad for you if you use it in the wrong way. So I respect people that don't use it at all, because there are some negative impacts of it. So for people like that, it would be sad for me to exclude them completely just because they're not on social media. It is nice to have, like, emails aren't really social media, because you can control what emails you receive. You can just like block addresses and sign up for only what you want to see. I think that a newsletter could work well for someone like that. Moonshire updates don't bother anyone. I hope that's true. I hope that's true. Could I please show my pathfinding system? I'd love to see how it's set up. Oh man, you are going to love this. You are in for a treat. I love showing the pathfinding system. Because the way the pathfinding system works is I have these tile states. Every tile in the game is tracking how close to the player it is and how feasible a location it is for an enemy to go there. So here, you can see, like, in this area, all these red dots represent a physical wall that you can't pass through. All of these dark green dots are positions that are really close to a wall, so they're not really ideal spots. And then these light green spots are points that are able to see the player, so they are really good spots to like work with pathfinding for. And then you can see, like, when I go around a corner, look, some of these points turn pink, like these up here. A pink spot means that it is physically close to the player, like these points here. This is close to the player, but there is an obstacle. So the player is in this corner here, and there's a wall here in the way. This point here is not able to see. It does not have a clear line of sight with the player, and that's why the point is pink. So when enemies are trying out their pathfinding, it's able to see which points are able to see the player and which ones are not. So it would know that these points here are more viable points to pathfind towards compared to these points. Because, like, let's say that the player, or let's say that the enemy was where this pink flower is. The enemy now needs to figure out, okay, where do I need to go in order to get from this point to wherever the player is? Because this flower does not have direct line of sight with the player. There's an obstacle. So what the flower would do is it would look around at all these dots and it would say, okay, well, I see that there are some green dots here and here. The flower is going to say, what's the closest green dot to me? And it's from here to here. It's going to pathfind from this point to this point. And once the flower reaches this point, all of the dots are going to recalculate, and it's going to use that extra information to figure out what's the best way to reach the player, because there's no line of... If it has direct line of sight, it's just going to move directly towards the player. If there isn't direct line of sight, it needs to use these extra dots to help figure things out. And it's an involved process. It took me some time to set this up, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. What was my reasoning behind picking a game framework as opposed to conventional engine like Unity/Godot? That's an awesome question. And the way I always answer it is just from personal preference. As I was exploring the different options for game engines and frameworks, probably like 8 years ago or so, maybe longer, I was trying them all out because they're all free, right? You can download Unity and Godot, but you can also and for free, or Unreal or Game Maker. They're all free. Same with Love2D and same with Monogame. I tried them all out, and I tried to find one that really felt right. And as I was using them, like I tried Unity and I tried Unreal, I've been using Game Maker my whole life, so I know Game Maker really well, but when I sat down and I made a little project, like I recreated Atari Breakout. I showed this on stream plenty of times too. Atari Breakout. Google. Whoop. Oh, come on. The browser. Can you imagine this? The browser crashed. Atari Breakout. But I recreated this game with Love2D, and that's just how I kind of got a feel for it, and it felt really good. Like the syntax of the language felt right. I liked Lua as a language. I was familiar with lots of coding languages. I was in computer science school at the time, so I had experience with coding already. But Lua didn't bother me. I liked it. I thought it was a good language, so I just stuck with it. And like I was saying earlier, any game engine, any game framework, they all can make good games. You can look up the list of games that were created with whatever game engine or framework that you had in mind, and I guarantee that you will find some good games. So that should be like proof. Like Godot, you could look up all the games that were made with Godot, and that's just like extra validation that, yeah, Godot can work for your product or your project. Same with Game Maker. A lot of people are like, I don't know if Game Maker can do what I want, but I bet it can. Like Undertale and Hyper Light Drifter made with Game Maker. I think that you can make any game with basically any engine. Obviously, there's exceptions. There's certain features that some engines have over other engines, but in general, they all can do the same sort of stuff. And also, you shouldn't fixate too much on like choosing one, because once you learn one, it's really easy to pick up on some of the other ones as well. The skills transfer pretty nicely. So it's okay. Like I like telling people to start with Game Maker just because that's what I started with, and it's pretty approachable, and the skills don't transfer one-to-one to Unity or Godot or Love2D, but it's not nothing. You still get a lot of context. Like Game Maker has variables and scripting and objects and instances and rooms and transitions and all these concepts that are constant throughout pretty much all these engines or these frameworks, you know, to some degree. And I think that it's really helpful to get started with that in something easy and approachable. I don't like saying that like Game Maker is easy. I don't think that it's an easy framework, but it is more approachable, I'd say, than probably most of them are. What should the golden leaf thing in the current demo do? Oh, so in the demo, it's supposed to launch a like electrical disc. Okay, show one of your enemies from the game. Oh yeah. I should have done that earlier. It broke. I crashed the game. I think that the enemies might be in a bit of a experimental state right now where they're not working. Yeah, I'm sorry, they're not working right now. Oh wait, no. I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, I think that I was clicking on, yeah. Okay. So here's my enemy. Ow. I don't think that he's going to be using the dots right now. I think right now he's just moving towards the player because the pathfinding is a little bit more. Wouldn't be a bit of it without Chalcade, without... Sorry, wouldn't be a Chalcade stream without crashing. I mean, the thing about development is that crashes and errors, it happens a lot. More than you might expect. Oh, the game crashed. What the... Why did that happen? Okay, that's not good. That's not normal. Yeah, I think the slime... Why did the slime crash the game? Why did that happen? Oh, no. Like, the other crash I was okay with, but, like, why did that crash? It's not supposed to crash. For loop? I don't think so. I haven't changed anything recently. I wonder... It must have hit some... It must have hit some... I don't know. Maybe... I don't know. I don't know why it would have crashed there. Because it didn't... Not only did it didn't crash, it like timed out. It was like worse than a crash. It stopped responding. The slime's too strong. Yeah, slime is so strong I can brick your PC. They should make like a game like that where the stakes are so high. Oh, it crashed again. Oh my gosh. Why would it be doing that? Maybe it's trying to print statements? Maybe, why would it be doing that? I don't know why it's crashing. It deletes System32 from your PC. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say, is that, like, it's like a hardcore WoW where you lose your character, except it breaks your PC. Or it doxes you. Squeak, hi, welcome in. It just follows the player. I mean, at the moment, yeah, I think that it was just following the player because there wasn't any complex, like, wall stuff. I am sad that the game is crashing when I spawn an enemy. That's bad. For anyone wondering, that's not good. When the game crashes, or times out, like, actually, if it crashed, that would be one thing, but it's, like, stalling and timing out. Because of the pathfinding debug? I mean, maybe. The thing is, it's supposed to be able to draw that. And also, it wasn't doing that before I spawned the mob. I think it has something to do with the mob. But we can try it again without the debug drawing and see if it crashes again. Let's turn off the dots and try it again. So let's see if it times out again. Nerf the slime boss. Yeah, it's too good. It can completely crash the PC. It's crazy. Is there a risk of live streaming a development project, code theft, idea theft? Yep. Yep, people could just steal whatever I'm writing on. They could look at my pixel art and steal it. They could download my game and extract all the crap from it and steal it. There's not an easy way to protect yourself from that. Also, there's not an easy way to protect myself from the slime crashing my game. I don't know why it would be doing that. Let's try... showing the print log, because that might help. Might be a long shot, but a freeze like that could indicate forever loop. Yeah, it does kind of... It reads to me like a memory leak. Because it happens after, like, 20 seconds. That's memory leak behavior to me. So, what I'm going to try... The other thing I'm going to try, also, is possibly there's some print statements that are constantly running. So let me turn on the console. Because it's possible, because, like, watch this. There's all these, like, print statements, so let me spawn an enemy again and see if there's any showing up. Oh, it is, look. Yeah, it's... Whoa, no! Look at him. He got stuck in the fire. That's sad. That was really sad. But yeah, I think that the problem is that it's printing all of this data every frame, somewhere in the mob files. So let's fix that. So I can find in folder, print. Yeah, so it's printing a lot of stuff. Let's get rid of all of these. I'm gonna get rid of all these print statements because I think it's bogging down. I think it's bogging down the game. Oh yeah, look at this one. Get rid of this. This one's fine. I think that was probably the main one. Looking at these other ones, I don't think that those are calling every frame. Haven't made any other games? Yeah, Necrozone, although it got taken down, you can try and find it on the App Store or Google Play, or you can go on necrozone.com. There's a very, very light build that I'm working on. I'm trying to convert Necrozone to a web game. Banger, yeah, it got a little bit loud. I think I should have kept an eye on that. I really, really love this song, though. This is a good one. Okay, so let's see if I think that's going to fix the problem, by the way. So let's see if the game crashes now. I think that the problem was just that it was printing like every frame and it was like overloading the memory. Just dodge, bro. It's easy. Well, it's hard to dodge when the whole client crashes. I'm really loving how you're tackling the crashing issues. Bugs aren't the best part of the game dev, but watching you solve them. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, bugs are probably one of the most unpleasant part of game development. And that's why I always say to start with like somewhat easier projects at the start, because when you're making a game and you run into a bug, it is a skill. Debugging is a skill. Figuring out what's causing your problems is a skill. And when you don't flex that muscle, when you don't like build that up, you're gonna struggle when a difficult problem comes up. Like right now, fixing this crash, that was pretty easy for me to fix, just because I remember in the past, I have caused memory leak issues from the console, like constantly printing. So it looks like I fixed the issue now because it's just something I've done before. So debugging for me, it's not as painful of a process as it used to be, mainly because I'm good at it. It's the same with any skill. Doing any skill that you're good at is fun. It's fun to play an instrument that you're good at, but it's not really fun to play an instrument that you're bad at. Or like playing a game that you're bad at, it's not really fun compared to a game that you're really, really good at. But it looks like that solved the problem. I'm glad to know that it was an easy fix. I do wish it was more of an exciting fix, though. Like, I wish I could have explored some like crazy cool code concept. Let's say that 10 times fast. But no, in reality, well, we found another crash. Okay, this crash I actually know about. This crash I know about, and I know how to fix it. The problem is that in mob navigation, okay, so let's go to mob navigation. Mob navigation. This line does not exist, or like this function, I got rid of this function. So this is gonna crash if this line gets hit. So we're gonna change this to this. I think that this is going to prevent it from crashing now. Oh, actually, but before I do that, let me reproduce the crash. This is really important when you're debugging things. Make sure you fully understand what's causing the problem before you make any code changes. Otherwise, you might not fully know if you fixed it. So that crash happened because I spawned an enemy. Okay, I spawned an enemy, and then I walked around a corner. So it did that because it needed to start pathfinding because it didn't get line of sight anymore. So since the line of sight got lost, it needed to call this viable pursue tile index list function. However, I recently changed it so that we don't use this anymore. I need to re-implement this. It's so since this doesn't exist, if this line runs, it's just going to crash the game. So I can comment out this part and just instead put an empty table, and it will prevent the crash, but it won't. It's still gonna. It's not gonna crash, but enemy probably is just going to stop moving. So let's see if it at least doesn't crash anymore. So I'm going to spawn the slime. We're going to go down here. Okay. And no viable tiles. That is where we're at. And actually, it did crash the game. Look. It crashed the game because it was printing this same statement over and over and over again. So there is still something I need to fix. Also, the console is crashed. Okay, there we go. No viable tiles. No viable tiles. Yeah, let's not print this. We don't need to do this. Whatever. Let's keep going. So really, what needs to happen is after the crash stops happening, I need to re-implement that function so that it can find the correct dot. Those dots I was showing earlier. It'll show the correct dot to move towards. We'll move this guy down here. Okay. So now he's stuck. He can't see me, so he's stuck. I think. Okay, so I can unstuck him though if he moves out of the corner. So crash is solved, but now there's the next step of I need to make it so that once it's in a corner and it can't see the player, it needs to use those tile states, all those colorful dots, to navigate itself out of the corner and towards the player. It would find what's the closest green dot to itself and then move itself there. In fact, I can go ahead and show that real quick. Let's turn that back on, and that'll probably be the last thing I do on stream. My brain comes up with crazy game mechanics, then pathfinding slaps me back in reality. That's just a sign to take it easy. And also, if pathfinding needs... I would challenge your game idea to say, maybe the pathfinding doesn't need to be so complex. Maybe you can design enemies that stay more in place or stay in a small section of the game. Maybe you can have arenas that are circular so that you don't need paths. Have things more situational, work around these problems. Because I'm with you, pathfinding is so complex, I wouldn't want you to like give up on your whole project because of pathfinding, just because of one complex thing, but you could reorganize your enemies or reorganize your goals so that you don't need complex pathfinding. You really don't need complex pathfinding unless you have a really complex game. So let's go ahead and grab that slime again. Okay, so he's in the corner, and you can see that... Whoa, that's loud. The enemy does not have line of sight with the player, so it is stuck. Like I said, the next step of the logic would be this enemy now needs to look, are there any nearby green dots? If there are any nearby green dots, these are dots that can see the player. And if the enemy can move towards one of these green dots, like if the enemy moved to this dot right here, it would have clear line of sight with the player, and it could attack me. It's possible to start game dev with bad mobile. Do not spam. But yeah, you can do your best with it. It's tough. But people have been posting on Discord sometime. People are trying to do development with mobile. But since you can do like a text editor or probably some light IDE on mobile, and like Love2D has an app that you can run applications on mobile, you could pull it off. It's not easy. It's hard. You have to put more work into it, but you could do it. Make something simple. Opinion on ECS over OOP. I mean, I use kind of like a combination of both. I was talking about my ECS earlier in the stream where like all my stuff has a state property to it, and that helps determine like mob.state move. This is my ECS, you know. The mob has a state, and the state is called move, and that indicates that the mob needs to be moving, you know. That's exactly how I do all that stuff. How to turn your game mechanic into something real. I mean, if you have experience with game development, it sounds like you already kind of have some experience with that. It is a challenge to come up with an idea and implement it, but really the way you implement an idea is to break it down into small pieces that are attainable. if you're kind of new to game development and you're overwhelmed by a certain idea, break that idea down into smaller pieces. Like if your idea for a game is a big, complex Zelda game with complex pathfinding and crazy combat and stuff like that, I would say that idea needs to be broken down into something simpler and to just do the movement first. Just do the attack or the rolling first. If your idea, if you have a specific idea that you're talking about that you're having trouble turning into a reality, you can let me know and I can give suggestions. But really, it all comes down to project management. And if you have an idea, you need to break it down into pieces that you can actually attain. Because you might just say, I want to create a pause menu. But if you just start by saying, well, I don't know how to create a pause menu, then that's a non-starter. And you, what, is that the end of it? No. What you would do instead is I'm going to create a pause menu. What's the first step to creating a pause menu? I'm going to create one button. One single button. I'm going to create a sword button at the very top, and that's going to be the very first step. And then after that, you're going to create the settings button, and then this button. And then the question is, how do you even make a button to start with? Well, then you have to break it down even further. So it's a lot of breaking problems down to tiny, tiny pieces and solving it one at a time. Because, yeah, making a pause menu like this is complicated and tough. But if you just jumped into it saying, I'm going to make a pause menu, no, you really have to think of it more like, okay, I need to make a UI system. I need to make buttons that I can click on. I need to handle button or mouse click handling. I need to create an event handler so that when a button is clicked, it does something. And then I need to have the scaling properly. I need to have... there's a lot that goes into it, dude. There's a lot that goes into something like UI. And I wouldn't want someone to say, well, I'm just not going to make UI then. Instead, you should say, I'm going to make the simplest UI possible. I'm going to make a UI that's just one single button, and when I click on it, it does one single thing. And that's how you get into development of anything, is get the easy steps, the fundamentals figured out, and then build it up one piece at a time. That's the only way to get to a final product. Do I like Cave Story? Yeah, I love Cave Story. Had a bug in one of my games where the player collision check should be 2/3 of the sprite rectangle and centered. Couldn't find a way, it didn't work. Yeah, I've had projects, especially starting out, where one small specific issue blocks me so badly that it breaks the whole project. I remember that phase. These days, since I take things one step at a time, I really do, if I run to a blocker, I stop until I get unblocked. Or, I might even take a step back and go around it. So, like you were saying, collisions and collision positioning. If I was having trouble getting this collision to position exactly on the player, around his body, I would take a step back and think, okay, first step is to get a collision for the player. And then I would make a rectangle that fully encompasses him. And then it's okay, now I need to make a rectangle that's slightly shorter and then start adjusting it from there. But then the position might be up at its head rather than the feet. And it's taking one step at a time. That's why game development is so time consuming, because the simplest things can take a whole day, a whole week of work. I've gotten stuck on bugs that have taken a week to figure out, but it only took one line of code to fix. One line of code that took a whole week to create, because some bugs are just so complicated that it's hard to even identify where to start. How do I make rounded corners rectangle? So the Winfield ones is actually built in. I think that they are drawn using specific polygons, so it actually calculates the corner positions. Why use octagons instead of rectangles or circles? I like octagons because they are flat around the bottoms, and I don't know. I don't like rectangles for certain things because the pointy edges are not really good for character shapes, and I don't like circles because they're too smooth. Octagons feel like a good middle ground. But on that note, I am going to end stream for today because my throat has reached its limit. My throat is scratchy, and I am hungry. I'm going to go get some food, and I will be back again next week for some more Moonshire Monday. I know. I'm sorry, guys, but I do have to step out. I'm tired, and I'm ready to call it quits. But thank you all so much for being here. It was a really, really good stream. I think that we talked about all kinds of really cool stuff. And got a lot of folks in chat, a lot of newcomers, a lot of returning people. Got Alex, Muffin, Neko, Turtle, Adele, Lugal, Cactus Jack, Frida, Bellcat, Lipa, Neko, Joey, Liam Brown, Allfather, Wolf, Penguin189, Esoteric Seth, Saba, Dead Peace, Foxite, Nick and Sophie, Unigame. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate you showing up and being here to join me for the Moonshire Monday that I have every single week. I will be back next week for another one, and I look forward to seeing you then. All right, everyone, take care. Bye, everyone.